When the Second World War was coming to an end, many Nazi officials had realized that their crimes would not go unpunished. Some accepted their fate, however, most were determined to stay unpunished for their wrongdoings. Many of them had succeeded in their attempts and escaped abroad. One of the most common destinations among those Nazis that had managed to escape was Argentina. This country in South America on the face of it wasn't particularly special. So why had this country become a Nazi safe haven? Well, let's find out. If we are going to find out what made Argentina such an attractive place to flee for Nazis, we shall begin from examining the already existing German diaspora in Argentina prior to the end of the war itself. Before the beginning of the Second World War in Argentina, existed a big German minority consisting of around 240,000 people. Germans were not, however, the biggest non-Spanish-speaking minority, as the Italian diaspora consisted of around 2 million people prior to the Second World War. To put it into perspective, the total population of Argentina amounted to something around 13 million people. The German minority prior to the war was extremely fractured. Many of the Germans were actually Jews who had fled from their country before the war. Many more Germans were political opponents of Hitler that had decided to flee from their country after the Nazis took power in 1933. Many more Germans, however, were actually pro-Nazi and have stayed in touch with their families in the fatherland. This contrast between pro- and anti-Nazi German refugees was well known. Some German neighborhoods were actually publicly known from their stances on National Socialism. With the large pre-existent German community, who was in some cases openly pro-Nazi, Argentina was a perfect target of immigration for many Germans. However, that large immigration of Nazi war criminals wouldn't be possible if not for the Argentinian government. Before the beginning of the war, the Argentinian government was rather pro-Axis. Many influential Argentine diplomats, politicians and businessmen had close ties with fascist and Nazi regimes in Europe. This combined with the large Italian and German diaspora meant that there was a large pressure on the Argentinian government to stay out of the war and even support the Nazis in some way. Only under the pressure of the USA, Argentina joined the Allies and declared war on the Axis. However, it was rather a symbolic gesture without any practical implications. The situation was further complicated after the change of the regime in 1946. The new president of Argentina, Juan Perón, was known for his fascist sympathies, and even before the war, his almost 10-year rule was in a lot of ways based on that of Mussolini, and he himself visited the Nazi Germany and Italy in the years of 1939 and 1940. Perón was a man of great ambition. He dreamed of a strong economy and military that would dominate the region. The big problem, however, was the lack of specialized labormen and experts that would drive his ambitions. The former Nazi officials couldn't possibly dream of a better situation. Perón, with his openly fascist sympathies, was willing to risk a diplomatic outrage with the USA and take care of what he thought would be a valuable asset in the form of former Nazi experts. Situation, however, wasn't as optimistic as Perón had expected. Most of the higher-ranking officials and most important scientists were already taken care of or handed over to the Allies, thanks to operations such as Paperclip. This forced Perón to accept the middle and bottom-ranking officials as his main target group. This decision turned out to be extremely fruitful, as thousands of Nazi doctors, engineers and bureaucrats were still looking for the opportunity to flee Europe and find a safe haven as far from the Nuremberg trials as possible. Thus, Argentine officials had begun their work and started to import thousands of former Nazi specialists, even those who were known to be war criminals. What is interesting is the fact that Perón openly admitted to being responsible for helping the Nazis run away from their past. Long before the end of the war, we were already prepared for the post-war era. Germany was defeated, we knew it, and the victors wanted to use the great scientific achievements which were undertaken by this country during the last 10 years. It was impossible to use industry facilities because they were already destroyed. The only thing that was left to use were people, and exactly they were the thing that had interested us. The plan of turning Argentina into a safe haven for Nazis wasn't easy, and it had quickly become obvious that such risky endeavors would soon be met with the contempt from the side of the former allies. That is why the whole operation needed to be rationally justified. Such an uneasy task was delegated to the Perón advisor, Santiago Peralta. He had made a complete list of necessary conditions to be accepted into the country as a way to legally justify Nazi immigration. The conditions were as following. Person needed to be considered of a white race. Spanish, Italian or German ancestry. These conditions were in practice even more liberal and were frequently adjusted to accept as many former Nazis and collaborators as possible. Many of the refugees were of French or even Horvatian origin. Fascist Italians were welcomed too, and even the son of Benito Mussolini, Vittorio Mussolini, was accepted into the country. The future German immigrants were to be accommodated with the special set of privileges. Many immigrants who were considered more valuable got not only free transport but also housing. The situation of more influential Nazis were also further improved by the close relation of the Perón with many influential Germans in Argentina, such as Ludwig Freude, a German capitalist and industrialist in Argentina prior to the war. Such people as Freude were well connected and were engaged in the organization of the new arrivals from the Reich. Germans were also hired in the immigration offices to further ease the process of immigration for the former Nazis. Such policies quickly resulted in the success, as with the end of 1946 the steady flow of new German arrivals had begun, and the plan appeared to work as intended for the Perón government. Unfortunately for Argentina, however, such a big endeavor didn't go unnoticed by the USA, who had quickly begun to publicly attack the Argentinian government. First in the press, later using diplomatic protest notes and even sanctions. The situation was further complicated by the rumors of the Fourth Reich, which was supposedly being created by the former Nazis in the underground. The pro-German attitude of Perón only made matters worse and brought further suspicions. These rumors quickly turned into conspiracy theories, and with them the international concern only grew. Despite this, the German population in Argentina steadily continued to grow. The US pretensions were ignored, and soon after Americans stopped their diplomatic actions against Argentina, as it had become clear that they were themselves using German scientists, such as Werner von Braun. At the beginning of the 1950s, the Nazi immigration to Argentina was largely accepted and later ignored. According to official data, around 66,000 Germans immigrated to Argentina after the war. However, this number might be grossly underestimated, and probably many more Nazis managed to escape and settle in Argentina. The Perón plan turned out to be beneficial for both sides. Nazis were able to flee justice and find a new, comfortable home, while Argentina received a significant amount of skilled laborers and specialists. Among them was a talented jet engineer, Kurt Tank. In the Third Reich, he was manager of one of the aircraft factories. He had arrived in Argentina in 1947 and quickly gained the approval of the Perón, as he had promised to construct an Argentinian jet fighter. Perón not only approved of the project but also quickly promised to help other Nazi engineers who were in many cases former Tank colleagues. In just 3 years, a relatively small team made almost entirely from former German engineers had successfully constructed the first Argentine jet, known as Pulki II. Perón, impressed by the performance of German engineers, presented the jet to the public in 1951. Kurt Tank and his team were generously rewarded for their job. Kurt gained the approval of not only the Argentine elite but also many former Nazis in Argentina. Hans Ulrich Rudel, former Nazi pilot, had described the situation in his book in the following manner. The Pulki II jet fighter designed by Tank and his team remains the dominant topic of many technical discussions. I was amazed at the way the Argentinian workers, who were quite unfamiliar with this kind of metalworking, adapted to it in a very short time and achieved relatively fabulous results. They rightly deserve the greatest praise. The Argentinians in general have great technical ability and learn very quickly. Ulrich Rudel remained an influential figure after the war. He never officially denounced Nazism and still identified as a National Socialist. A lot of his works after the war focused on the justification of Nazis' actions and had a major influence on creation of the Clean Wehrmacht myth and the emergence of neo-Nazi movements after the war. His work and political agitation wouldn't be possible if not for the Perón's government. Kurt's success made Perón even more bold in his actions, and as a result he personally ordered the start of the Argentine nuclear program under the watch of yet another Nazi figure. Ronald Richter, a Nazi scientist, was nominated to be a head of the Henchmen project. The main aim of the project was to develop a fusion power device known as the thermotron. If this attempt would succeed, Argentina would gain an unlimited source of energy. Unfortunately, the whole project turned out to be a failure. However, his experiences would later result in the development of the nuclear power plant in Argentina. Yet, Perón's hopes of Argentina becoming a nuclear power were never realized. Perón's decisions and actions were met with the increased discontent among certain social groups. One of them was clergy, who feared for some of their privileges and wealth. The situation was further complicated by the press scandal. Though much of Argentina's media had since 1950 been either controlled or monitored by the administration, lurid pieces on his ongoing relationship with an underage girl named Nelida Rivas, known as Nelly, something Perón never denied, filled the gossip pages. Pressed by the reporters on whether his supposed new paramour was, as the magazines claimed, 13 years of age, the 59-year-old Perón responded that he was not superstitious. Yet, as a part of the political repression, 2 Catholic priests were expelled. This sparked a snowball effect, and as a result, Perón was excommunicated on the 15th June 1955 by the declaration of the Sacred Consistorial Congregation. The following day, Perón called for a rally of support on the Plaza de Mayo. a time-honored custom among Argentine presidents during a challenge. However, as he spoke before a crowd of thousands, Navy fighters' jets flew overhead and dropped bombs into the crowded square below before seeking refuge in Uruguay. This incident was in fact a part of the coup against Perón, who was de facto deposed and his place was taken by the military junta. This event proved to be disastrous for Argentina, as a new rule brought only havoc on the Argentine population. Perón would regain power in 1973, and he wouldn't, however, reign long, as he would die in 1974. In the end, Nazis had little lasting impact on Argentina. Argentina was not the only place in South America that accepted Nazis and collaborators, as many eventually found their way to Brazil, Chile, Paraguay and other parts of the continent. Many Nazis scattered after Perón's government fell in 1955, fearing that the new administration, hostile as it was to Perón and all of his policies, might send them back to Europe. Most of Nazis who went to Argentina lived out their lives quietly, fearing repercussions if they were too vocal or visible. This was particularly true after 1960, when Adolf Eichmann, architect of the program of Jewish genocide, was snatched off a street in Buenos Aires by a team of Mossad agents and whisked off to Israel, where he was tried and executed. Other wanted war criminals were too cautious to be found. Joseph Mengele drowned in Brazil in 1979 after having been the object of a massive manhunt for decades. As for the rest of Argentine Nazis, most assimilated into Argentina's sizable German community and were smart enough to never talk about their past. Some of these men were even quietly successful financially, such as Herbert Kuchmann, a former commander of the Hitler Youth who became a prominent businessman. The story of Nazis in Argentina is a rather interesting one. However, it stems far from the tale of the mysterious Fourth Reich and the survival of Adolf Hitler as it is sometimes presented in conspiracy theories. The whole story is of course much more complicated, and in this video I had only covered a topic briefly. Anyway, thanks for watching, all sources are in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and like to make Duce feel proud. See you all next time.